Welcome to you all to this international panel with the question, why publish a Greek author today? I'm Katerina Fragu, owner of Iris Literary Agency. I have a 25 years experience in the field as I am presenting Greek authors worldwide since 25 years when I created the agency. And sometimes, first of all, I'm sorry, I wanted also to thank the Hellenic Foundation for Culture for organizing this event, which is a very important event for all of us who are working on promoting and speaking and presenting and translating and editing and publishing Greek literature internationally. So my point of view is, of course, an agent's point of view. And sometimes what I think is that the most appropriate question is not why to publish, why will you publish, why don't you want to publish, but why won't you publish a Greek author today? As we know, for all of us, I think, literature is a bridge to worlds we don't know, is a travel to other languages, to other countries, to other people's lives. It's a connection between all of us. And the subjects, after all the subjects of literature are quite the same. It's love, family, work, and society, of course. It is also history, of course, underneath, and a lot of other subjects. But why speaking, if you are a Greek author speaking about loneliness, for example, how will you speak? So how much differently will it be from a French, from an English, from a German, from a Croatian, from a Turkish author? From a Russian, how is science fiction, for example, treated in all the countries? Is it treated in a different way? Is it treated in the same way? Anyway, today we are here to give an answer to this question, and it will be among practice. I mean, we will ask publishers, editors, and translators and authors who are on this field, working on this field. And I will ask almost all of you the same questions. I wanted also to underline before we begin that the smaller is a language, the problem with Greece is not only for Greece. I mean, we ask about why to publish a Greek author, but it is the same for all the languages, apart the English language authors, as it is the most spoken language today. So if we consider what I said in the beginning about literature, the smaller is a language, the most important is to translate it and to have subjects and descriptions of lives from this language. And the main problem of that is that literature uses words, and we all know that Babel was a curse against humans. It was a way of non-communicating between us. So we need these bridges of communication. Anyway, I will begin now with Frauke Schneider, who is publisher of, who is the publishing director of Archer Literary Publishing since September 2019. Before that, she was the editorial director of Atrium Publishing for several years. Frauke Schneider lives and works in Hamburg in Germany, and she will publish Margarita Liberaki, a classic Greek author of the 40s, next spring in Germany. So I would like to ask her, who is Arche and how does a Greek author fit in their list? How did you come across Margarita Liberaki, and why did you decide to publish her? What are your publishing house strategies, and why it is important for you to publish a Greek author in Germany or Greek authors in Germany, and what is the challenge of that? So, Frauke.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me and joining you in this conversation. Hi from Hamburg here in Germany. I'm really sorry we can't be all in Frankfurt today, but almost none of us Germans are in Frankfurt this year, so it's just the situation. And yeah, to answer your questions directly, Catherine, we're really proud and excited to publish Margarita Liberaki over here in Germany next spring. She actually is our first Greek author here at Arche, which is a little astonishing itself because Arche has a really long and strong traditional history. It's a small publishing literary house with a great tradition and a great standing that was founded in 1944 already by a really courageous law student at the age of 23 who decided that it was at that time in 1944, it was founded in Switzerland, of course, not in Germany. And the main idea was to build a literary arc for all the authors at that time who couldn't be published and who suffered from the destruction of that time and the Nazi regime. So translators, big authors were always really important to Arche and still are. We're still looking for voices that need to be heard and authors that really show why the book as a medium itself is indispensable too. So as a small publishing house, we don't have a big marketing money or things like that. So we really need to look for opportunities to find voices that are outstanding and that ideally haven't been read or heard over here in Germany. And the way we do that usually is, of course, staying in contact with agents, with foreign publishers, and especially when it comes to the foreign publishers who have a similar profile like we do, we keep a close look on their programs. And this is actually also how we found Margarita Liberaki, because she was translated into the English and into the American English first, and she has been reissued last year. So a new edition came out last year in the USA by the New York Review of Books, which is a very great place for classics from all over the world. And so this was a really fortunate case for us because I could myself, not being able to speak Greek, I could read about her biography and about the general idea of the novel, and I could read the English translation. And of course, it's not the same as reading an original because also the English version was shortened by quite a bit, something that we won't be doing because the original is great as it is. But this was our chance to find Margarita Liberaki, and then we reached out to our US scout at this time, who put me into contact with Catherine, and this is how all this happened, and I'm really happy, of course, that it did. And I guess I will just keep talking, Catherine, because you already told all the questions, right? So I will just,
Yes, I took all the questions. So you can go on, for example, for why did you choose her? How did you convince your publisher to buy a Greek author?
Yeah, well, I did convince myself basically because everybody else was very excited right from the beginning. We have a really fortunate case here, and I think it's for us it's easier to do her over here in Germany than it must be for let's say for contemporary Greek debuts, because she's a classic, and classic rediscoveries are a really important program section here at Arche that we stand for also, and that we are quite successful with. And so this combines the literary classic section for us, combines two aims that we have. It's literary aim and what we think is necessary to be published here in Germany, but it's also and economic thinking, which all of us, of course, have to do at some point and have to consider, because we know that books like that really hit a nerve here with our German readership. Books like classic rediscoveries that weren't really known here for the last decades. They will definitely find someone who wants to do articles about them and all of that. So with this case, it's as just like I said, it's a little easier to come up with a strategy that will give her a big readership and attention here in Germany, because she already is a best-selling classic in Greece, a very popular author and a very popular book itself. So this gives us a lot of material to work with. Also, the foreign translations that have existed until now. I mean, not only in the US, it was firstly done in French by Gallimard, and she also was translated into Italian. She will be published in the UK and Albania shortly. So it's quite a big list.
Romania.
And of course, oh yeah, that's true, that too. So the question always was, why wasn't she published in Germany with, such a big book market and such a very, important voice also she is, and fascinating life she had. So just like I said, all of those things make it quite easy to position her here and to show the readership and the press, this is something you really haven't heard of, you haven't known, and that you really missed and you must read. And so this title will be our lead title next spring. Our program is quite small, as I said, but we always put every effort we have, of course, into our books, especially our lead titles. So she has a really big place. She takes up a lot of place in our catalog. We have about 6 pages just to tell her story and her publication history as well. We will put, of course, every effort we have or we can have into marketing. We will produce a little audio sample of the book, and of course also advanced reading copies of the book itself, because it really is something that the booksellers over here need to read before it is published. And and of course we will put all our efforts into the press. And I think this will work very, very nicely, because it has all those good arguments for it, just like I said, but also it is a book that really, really fits into this time, of crisis. It's not about crisis at all. It's actually quite the opposite. It's very idyllic. It's a novel about 3 sisters coming of age living in the Greek countryside over the course of 3 summers. So it puts us into an idyllic or seemingly idyllic life, living in the Mediterranean. This fascination is still very, very big here in Germany. This is also one argument for the books that will make it easier to sell. Nobody can travel. Everybody wants to be away. Hardly anybody got to travel this summer. So publishing it next year, where nobody will know what the travel situation will be like. But still, books like that will work well. But this is, of course, not only why we publish it. It's a very, very modern book, and I think it will appeal to very, very, especially female readers, because it simply deals with the question, what does it mean to be a woman? And it was published in 1946 originally in Greece, and we're publishing it 75 years later, but it has lost nothing of the relevance of this question. And then this is why I think women will still be very, very fascinated with it. And so these are the main arguments for the book. I think it's quite clear for everyone to see why this is probably comparatively easy case, I would say. But of course, the challenges are quite high, even in Germany, to publish unknown authors, not only at this time where it's particularly difficult, but generally, because, the situation overall is not bad at all. We have a really strong and large book market. We have a variety of literature, of books, of funds and prices. So also a lot of money from the government and everything goes into literary publishing. But of course, every publishing house has to stand on its own feet and has to, survive economically. And this has become a lot harder in Germany in the last couple of years. also due to more and more books are being published. We have, I don't know how many, I can't even tell right now how many new releases we have each year, but it's enormous. And at the other end, we have a shrinking readership. I think this affects every one of us more and more, especially of the younger and the middle-aged readership, having so many other digital media forms to consume. So it's hard to reach those people. And this is also why big literary publishing houses here in Germany, like Surkamp, like Hansa and Fischer, are very hesitant to publish big international authors that just don't sell enough copies anymore. So I think that's the main situation here, that every international author, every German author too, faces here in Germany. But in my opinion, it's also the language barrier. I mean, Greece is of course very, very close to Germany. It's part of Europe and a very important country, but very few people in the book market are able to read Greek and to judge Greek literature. They are closer to France, Italy, Spain, to the Roman languages that more people speak and understand. So we really rely on those few very, very important literary translators we have, who are actually able to read and to tell us if it's worth, publishing something or no. And this, of course, means that the whole process of publishing a book, deciding upon a publication, takes longer. And with us, we had the very, very rare case, a very fortunate case, that we were able to look at an English translation first. And this, of course, helped very much. And I just want to finish quickly.
Dear Frauke.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a problem hearing you in the last minutes, so I don't know what.
Okay.
I couldn't hear myself. Perhaps all of you are hearing normally, but I couldn't hear you. But I don't know. Did you hear what Frauke said?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it was only me. So I'm sorry. I didn't understood the last 2-3 minutes, I guess, that you were speaking about. But anyway, till when I heard clearly, you introduced another subject, which is the marketing, of course, which is very, very important to our work. And you underlined the quality of literature, of course, which is also another point of that makes no difference if an author is from Greece or elsewhere. I want you all to think about these subjects, and we can talk about it at the end after everybody has presented something, if you wish to. So now I will, thank you, Frauke, and I will pass to Thomas Zarod, who is an owner of a publishing house in Poland with a quite difficult name for a foreigner, which is Książkowe Klimaty.
Great.
He's so he has translated. He's translating authors of Central and Southern European languages, and he's a big fan of Greece. The questions I could ask you, Thomas, are the same as with Frauke. I mean, who are the authors I know that you have published more than one Greek author, so just present a little bit the authors you have translated and published, or who are under translation now, and the way you choose them, and the way you market them in the Polish market.
Hello. The idea of publishing Greek books was simple. Every year goes to holidays to Greece 1 million of people from Poland, and we thought that maybe after they return, some of them will be interested in Greek culture, Greek literature, or something more about it. We selected a few books which we thought that will be interesting in Poland, and we started to publish. It was 7 years ago. In this time, we published more translations from Greek than last 1,000 years of Poland, and maybe the main reason was that I am a fan of Greece, and I'm visiting Greece every year, sometimes 2 or 3 times, mainly from tourist reason, but I try to interest in Greek culture. The first book we published in Poland was short stories of Lena Kitsopoulou. It was titled Bats, and we added to this book short story Aquavela. It was first publication in all the world, because in Greek version this short story was not included. We choose the best translators of Greek literature in Poland. For example, Ewa Schiller, Michał Bzinkowski, but many of translators was debutants in our publishing house. In the 7 years, we published about 15 Greek books. One of them was, of course, book of Amanda. Hello, Amanda. Our idea was that we not only publish, but we try to make meetings with authors in Poland. We invited authors to many events, book festivals in Poland. Most of our authors visited Poland during these 7 years. I don't know what to say more.
You talked about the other subject, which is the translators, who are, of course, indispensable. Without them, we couldn't do that. And are you happy with the Greek authors? If you compare the Greek author sales to which other languages from Southern, I mean, Italian?
No,
no. Any comparison which is not very disfavorable for Greeks?
Selling of Greek literature is difficult in Poland. As we talked here earlier, the best-selling literature is English language literature, and we are a small publishing house and don't have much money for marketing of it, and
so a help to the marketing could be well received as well, not only the help for translation, not only funds for translation.
Yes, most of countries from we publish books has own budget for translations, for marketing of books. Greece not, we know it.
We hope it will change soon, but it's not yet. I cannot affirm it yet. Yeah.
The best selling of languages are books from Czech Republic, and maybe it's reason that the Czech Republic is a neighbor of Poland. We love travel to Czech Republic for beer, for mountains, and love Czech for their smile and everything. And but Greek books are okay in selling for us.
Yes, we are happy with Greek authors, and apparently you also connect traveling with reading. I mean, not that you read when you travel. I mean that if you have traveled, you can read the literature of the country you know by travel or by tourism or by just going for friends. Because these are some subjects I will talk about at the end of our discussion. Thank you, Thomas. I would like now to give the speech to Amanda Michalopoulou, who is an author, a Greek author of 8 novels and 3 short story collections. She has been translated into 20 languages, and she is also about to receive a prize even today. So I will ask Amanda to present her experience as an author and to present herself better than I did.
Catherine, I don't know if I'm going to receive the prize. I'm just in the short list of the ALTA prize, which is the National Translation Prize in the United States. It's the second time I'm in the short list, but I don't know. It's tonight, so.
Yes.
6 books from around the world, so
we can be proud.
No, what I could do about this experience, because I've heard a lot about how books are translated through the English translation, which is true. I mean, with the second novel I had in the United States, I'm with most of my books, I'm with Dalkey Archive, which is an experimental but very important publisher. This book, Why I Killed My Best Friend, was with Open Letter, which is again a very European central publisher in the United States. And my experience is that after I got this book with them and some good critics, then the translation started to run. Then I had like 7 or 8 translations around the world. But because the editors who read mainly English or French or German could read the book. And this is again my experience with this novel. God's Wife is my latest novel in translation, the one which is in the short list now. It's the story of the world narrated from the point of view of the wife of God. It's a post-feminist novel, I would say. The translators the editors started to care about the book when the American translation came out, and especially because there was a review now in Harvard Review comparing me to something between Elena Ferrante and Nabokov, and then it was like in some weeks something happened, and I think this proves the point how difficult it is to get in direct contact with Greek books because of the language barrier. We have to have first an English translation, which is the most difficult to have, because English language as a whole, English and American English, they are so self-centered, and they have reasons to be. They have great literature, and they feel they are in the center of the world. I mean, everybody knows who is the President of the United States. If I ask you now just to tell me who is our president now, who would say? It's the same with literature. It's the same with every aspect of life. Greece is a small country. Greece is, as you said, Katerina, visited through tourism. And I think it's also a bit awkward to ask from a literature, from a national literature, to be a kind of national product, like it's feta cheese, or is the orange trees, or is the Mediterranean, which I understand as a passion, as an idea. But for me, as a novelist, I would like, it's a romantic idea that someone cared about what Greek writers actually write. And if it is something that could be compared in the paradigm of what kind of literature is written today.
Yes, I think that every publisher is asking to know what Greek authors write, but they can market it like feta.
Exactly, you're right. Yeah, you're right. But as I said in the
this is the problem of our world. We have to market things.
As you said in the beginning, the themes of the literature are love and death. It's it's these two big categories, and then it's around this. So more or less, we all write about the same things, but we write in different ways. And I think it's important to know these different ways. The question, why don't you want my books? Why don't you want the Greek books? It's like a love affair question. Why don't you want me? As if I put it in a psychoanalytical spectrum here. Why don't you want me? Am I not good enough for you? And why not? So I think here it's another aspect. If we talk in these terms, how we can understand each other, how we can care about each other, how we can go beyond the cliché and the stereotype of what contemporary Greece is. For instance, I heard so many nice things about Liberaki, which I love, but I have to tell you that her daughter is much better author. I have to say.
Don't worry.
Also translated in English. She got many prizes in French. Of course, I say it because she's my paradigm, Margarita Karapanu. And how nice it would be if Arche, after Liberaki, would go and publish Karapanu, because this would create a relationship also. It's a relationship between two authors, two women writers, a mother and a daughter of important significance. And then someone would write a review also about this. If we have a book of a mother and a daughter who were important in Greece, then other alienation, other ways of contacts would get there.
Yes.
So I think one has to build as a community. And I understand marketing, but sometimes marketing needs time and needs good ideas and needs connections. This is why I use this example of Limberaki and Karapanu, who, by the way, mother and daughter, and they had the same name. I think this is, again, a psychoanalytic universe. So I'm very enthusiastic with some works of Greek literature that I think are so important and so interesting for all of us to see, and try to find these hidden connections with, for instance, with works of art of in Bulgaria, Albania. I'm thinking of Gospodinov now, who is a wonderful writer also. I'm thinking of Olga Tokarczuk, that I met because Thomas invited me to Poland. And after that, because I met her, I started reading her. And I think of all these very strange connections. You go somewhere, of course, now we cannot travel, but you go somewhere, you read books, you make the connections. And this is how literature, as life, as all our social ways of being, this is how life and literature work, through connections. Now, about me, I was lucky because I had these American translations. small publishing house, but there are these editors all around the world, and this is the good thing for us writers, that are reading the reviews in the American newspapers, and they're reading the books, and this is the way that we, strangely enough, we import European literature through the States. This is very strange if you think about it. It's the same way that we talk about how we get here in Greece avocados from Chile, although we have in Creta, for instance. You have to go around the world to get the certificate that this is a good avocado and then get it back, the Cretan avocado, for instance. I think this is the crazy way our world works. And we know it now. We know it also because of the pandemic, how all these ways of trying to resolve problems through making them more complicated problems is not the way to work. Yes. As human beings, as literary people, as social entities, it's not a nice work. We have to find another way of working, and we have to find another marketing, if I may so. I'm not a marketing person, but I think we ought to find a new way of marketing ideas.
Marketing ideas, indeed. Amanda, I think that the paradigm you gave about the avocado and literature coming from the States, Greek literature imported from the States, is not exactly the same as the first works of literature were Greek, and they weren't into the world. But avocado, I think that it is a Latin American product. I'm not sure.
I'm talking about the contemporary
in Crete, so that's why it's better.
But what you say now is also important, because when we talk about Greek literature today, we talk only about the classics. And
no, not anymore. I think we have, we talk always about classics because it is classics, and even Margarita Liberaki is a classic, but the centuries between are a lot. But no, I think that we have Greek music, Greek films, Greek literature, actual ones that we can talk about. I mean, the last years, it's better and better. But I wanted to thank you.
A last thing I wanted to say about translation, if I may. It is very, very important to do something with these translation funds. In all the European books I read in translation in Greece, I see this. It was funded, but
yes,
this is very important. We have to do something, because also the small publishers in Europe, they need these extra funds for the translation.
Of course, this is very, very important, and we will speak about this again. I would like now to ask Ivan Sersen, who is a Croatian publisher and literary agent, and who has Sandorf Publishing House, and he has published quite a lot of Greek authors. I would like to ask him to present the publishing house, the authors he has presented, how he chosen them, of course, and how he thinks of marketing, what he expects from us, and how is he happy what he is doing with the Greek authors. Hi, Ivan.
Hello, Katerina. Hello, everyone. My name is Ivan, but it says Stanko. It's my son's name because I think he renamed the Zoom application or something. So it appears that my name is Stanko, but it's my son's name. Anyway, I agree completely with Amanda on perspective of small literature comparing to bigger literatures around the world. Because where I'm coming from Croatia or ex-Yugoslavia, we belong to a small literature, and often it happens in the same way. The author gets translated abroad in a bigger language, in predominantly English, but also French or German, and then only after that happens, the author gets translated to smaller languages. So I think my connection or our publishing house, Sandor's connection with Greece and Greek literature is a little bit different because we belong to the same geographical one geographical part, which is the Balkans, and there is a lot of similarities between Greek and Croatian or ex-Yugoslavian or Yugoslavian literature in subjects, in tone, in culture, and I started publishing Greek authors by publishing a very strange book by a Greek classic, Nikos Kazantzakis, a great world literature author, a book named Asketiki, the Ascetics, or it's subtitled Salvatore's Day. It's a philosophical book about how Nikos Kazantzakis saw the world and saw life or saw philosophy. And I was talked into publishing this book by my friend, the editor Slavko Amulic, who worked with me for years. And I was familiar with Kazantzakis' work that was previously published in Croatian and Serbian, like The Last Temptation of Christ or Zorba the Greek. But we decided to publish selected Kazantzakis' work, which were previously unpublished in Croatian or Serbian, which are also great books, like Letter to Greco or Kapitan Mihalis or Fratricides. These are all great books with a lot of subjects, touching upon subjects which were touched upon by great Croatian or Yugoslavian, Serbian, Bosnian authors also in the 20th century. So there are a lot of relationships between what Kazantzakis wrote about and what writers in other Balkan countries were writing about at the same time. Even though we have really small number of translations from altogether from Greek language to Croatian, really small numbers. So I found it interesting and I wanted to somehow change that in whatever small pace. So after Kazantzakis, we continued with contemporary Greek authors, such as Maria Xiluri, a great younger Greek writer, or two Cypriot authors, Antonios Georgiou and Emilios Solomou. And next year we are going to publish Nikos Chrysos, a great book, New Day, which I came to through Katerina. And also we will publish next year a beautiful book of poetry by a Greek poet and publisher, Thanos Gogos, his book Glasgow. And through poetry, I have to say, we found another connection between Croatian and Greek literature. And I think poetry is somehow underestimated in translation of literature, and it's always being thought poets have their own circles, it's a different way of communication, it's much more closed, it's for more closed public, for smaller audience. But actually, if you can make a book of poetry visible and read, you will have the effect, the desired effect, much quicker, because poetry is actually much easier to receive once you decide you want to receive poetry as such. My opinion is that poetry is a great way of communication, and poets are really dedicated to what they do. I'm not saying that the writers are not. I am a writer myself, but I think poets are somehow the last romantics of the world, and they not that they don't care about marketing, which we mentioned, but marketing of poetry is reading poetry or translating poetry. So I think poetry is very important, and I admire Greek poetry scene. Really, after I met Thanos and his publishing house Traka and many other poets in Greece, I realized that Greece has this, you can say, still old or traditional, but I think it's eternal admiration for poetry, that it doesn't have anything to do with old times. It's poetry belongs to the new times even more than any other literary genre, and I think that there in the poetry lies a great energy in Greece, and of course many of the writers are poets at the same time, or vice versa. So for me, always when I come to Greece, for me, Greece is a land of poetry, and that means the land of literature. I mean, the poetry is always a lead. Somehow I see it as a leader of literature, or a main inspiration for literature.
Yes.
So with what we can do more for Greek literature, we Thanos and me, we started 2 years ago a project, Ulysses Shelter, exchanging young writers, poets, and translators between Croatia, Greece, and 3 other European countries, that is United Kingdom, Serbia, and Slovenia. And the writers and translators and poets travel to different locations and meet each other and present their work, present their books. And there are already more translations coming out of this project. So I agree with everyone. It's very hard to bridge this gap in communication in between what we call smaller languages. But we have to use all means that there are. And if we can get to an author through an English translation, it's also great. It's also good that we can read an author from a language that we can't read. I always look at these big languages as intermediaries for all the languages that we can't read, and us from the smaller languages or smaller countries or cultures, we are familiar with translation more than readers or publishers from the bigger languages, because there, in United States it's 3%. In France, I think it's 7% of translations in the overall publishing industry. And in Croatia is 50%. And I believe in Greece is similar. So we live with the translation. We know what the translation means. We cherish the translation as such, because the translation, we from the smaller countries, we know that the translation is the mean of carrying the knowledge, passing on the knowledge. So I believe that we from the smaller countries have to connect more to work together, to exchange works of literature, and that's how we will expand our knowledge. I also have to say we published 3 books of Janis Varufakis. I guess that everybody knows the Greek economist and politician. And it's an interesting thing. His books are very, very well received in Croatia. And I have to mention his works because he is our mostly read Greek author that we have. And we publish also theory and history and works on let's say, current affairs. But I think Greece has a lot to offer in all fields for contemporary European reader. I think Greece is a country where a lot of important things are happening right now and have always been happening.
Yes, so sorry, Ivan. Yes, I think, of course, I think as well that Greece has to offer, because it's a small country in and after a big crisis. It's a kind of example for other countries, because all Europe and I think all the West world has a crisis, which is political, financial, and cultural, and ethics. And yes, I think that Greece is a kind of paradigm, and I have seen it, this thing, when I present, I mean, in my appointments with foreign publishers, they are for years now asking about what happens in Greece. And then we speak about literature, of course, that shows what happens in Greece in a way. I mean, yes, this is another subject, but now we have to go on. I'm sorry for I will leave Maurizio De Rosa speak about his experience as a translator of Greek, to Italian, and also as an editor. And as he is also a reader for some publishing houses in Italy, I would like to ask you, of course, how is he convincing the Italian publishers and what he receives as an answer from Italian publishers when he presents Greek authors. Thank you, Maurizio.
Hi, thank you for your invitation. It's very difficult in Italy to promote Greek literature, modern Greek literature, because in Italy, Greece is ancient Greek in a way, and the second issue is that modern Greek literature is a small literature, like other small literatures that try to seek a vital space in Italy. So I speak always for Italy, especially for Italy, that for small literatures there are two categories for literature, only for small countries and small literatures. The canon, what I call canon, and more commercial books, fiction. So in Italy, all small literatures have special relationships with small publishers. A case study for me in Italy is the Scandinavian literature, that Scandinavian and Holland, Netherlands, or literature of Netherlands, that in Italy are being published the last 20 years by one publishing house in Italy. So I think it's very important for Greece, for Greek literature, to develop these relationships with small literature publishing houses. In Italy, we had a specialized and small publisher that was Crocetti Edition, and other small publishers. But small literatures need small publishers. Small publishers need small literatures, but all the system needs the support of the country, of the state that try to promote its literature. It's very important for me because I repeat, for this case study, the Scandinavian literature, they invest resources, economic resources for the promotion of their literature. So it's very important for me. It's very important not only the support of state for translation, it's very important for marketing, such as St. Thomas, and maybe is important for small literatures to find a brand name. I think for Greece, brand name. I remember 10 years ago, we were speaking about the word Greek cinema. I think for the literature, Greek literature, the issue, the identity issues, and there is a word, a characteristic, maybe is a brand name. And I think that in the modern world, identity issues and a different way, a different point of view about things, like a word point of view, can help to promote modern Greek literature. Now, about the second question, how I convince publishers in Italy, it depends. It depends. For canon, that is for books with artistic aims, not so commercial, is more simple and more difficult in the same time. It depends from the aims of publishers. For crime fiction, for example, Petros Markaris, but I'm not translator of Petros Markaris, is being published by a very big publisher, and so I think it's very difficult to convince. But if the small publisher fall in love with your description of the book and with the writer, I have more chances for translation in an environment very difficult.
Okay, I will now. Thank you, Maurizio. I will now ask Anne-Laure Brisac, who is a publisher and a librarian and also a translator from Greek in France, to give us a very brief, because we don't have a lot of time, experience of what she has done and received from the French market, let's say.
Thank you, Serena. Thank you for your invitation. What I could say as a publisher first, in my very little publishing house, is it's a story of friendship between France and Greece since centuries. And I think that most of most of the modern Greek literature that is translated into French since like 20 years, something like that, let's say, are published by small publishers, like Maurizio says, in France. And why do they choose to publish contemporary or classics of the 20th century, like Seferis, Kazantzakis, Kavadias? I published Kavadias also. Why do they do that? I think it's the main reason is the voice, is the quality of the voice of the writer, first of all. But it's inscribed into this story of friendship between France and Greece that still goes on now. Well, the quality, originality of the voice of the writer, of the voice of the quality of the translation, of course. And if you try to look at the market in France, at this market, you see that there are plenty, rather plenty publishing houses that choose to publish 1, 2, even 10 titles here or there of modern Greek literature. Of course, they need help from the state, but often they receive help from the French state for the translation. Then the difficulty is to promote, to disseminate the books, to sell the books, not only to translate them, but to sell, not to keep them in the storage, but to make them sold. So that is one of my job in one of my mission in the National Library, in the French National Library. I try to promote also the French, French translation, and also Greek books, directly Greek books in the library, by organizing meetings, conference where it's possible, or like buying books to give them in open access in the rooms for the readers in the library. So I don't know if I answer well to your question,
Yes.
Katerina.
Of course, Anne-Laure. So France is always a friendship. So we have again the friendship, and of course the quality of literature and translation, which we all know it's very important. And I will now give the speech to Elizaveta Timofeeva from a Russian publishing house, Ogi, who is publishing the last year some important Greek authors. In collaboration, I will let Elizaveta tell us about it.
Thank you. I would like to say that the thing that bothered me the most was that people practically don't know anything about modern Greek literature. If we ask someone on the street what can he or she tell about Greece, he or she will tell that firstly, that's a great place to vacation, and secondly, it's cradle of our civilization, of our culture, and so on. If we ask about some Greek literature names, they maybe the most intelligent one will say Elitis and Seferis because of the Nobel Prize, maybe Saturis, maybe Kavafis. And the first part of the Greek library book series has started from the poetry in almost 20 years ago, from the books by Seferis, Elitis, Saturis, not Seferis, Elitis, and of course Kavafis. Kavafis was known because of Brodsky, who has appreciated his poetry very highly. So there was no need in marketing, because just mentioning of Brodsky's name was the best way to sell Kavafis books, and now it's impossible to find one. I've tried it really hard, it's impossible. But last year, the book series was re-energized with the help of Hellenic Foundation for Culture, and their help is priceless, and without their support, I don't think we can have done it. We decided to take a new approach to the selection of authors and texts, and we decided that it's time to publish not only the most important poets, but some hidden gems and some books that are different to translate and to publish. For example, it all has started with a miracle, because young poet and translator Ippolit Kharlamov has decided to translate the most important, the most beautiful and famous poem by Odysseus Elitis, It Is Worthy. I'm not the one who should tell you about its significance, about its difficulty and so on, and I even can't imagine if someone can translate it by the order, by the request, because it's very difficult. It's very beautiful and very difficult. But he did it, and he brought the translation to us, and that was, well, the start of the second life of Greek library. Then we published another book by Elitis, a collection of his poems, and now Russian audience can have a broad picture of his creative work. The first book of Elitis in Agi was published 12 years ago, but only now we can present him in all his, mighty glory and beauty. And also we have published for the first time as a book a novel by Kostas Tachtsis, The Third Marriage. We have combined it with some of his short stories. Now we are working on the second book of his prose with short stories and his unfinished novel, his novel. We have translated some authors for the first time, and for example, we have translated Gonatas and all his 6 collections of short stories for the first time in the editorial practice of Gonatas were published as one book. So all his wonderful world is now also presented as
I hope you will continue with Greek actual authors of novels, which are more appreciated, let's say, by the market, by the librarians and the bookshops, not the librarians, sorry. And I will now, thank you, Elisaveta, and I will now give the speech to another Greek author who is Christos Chrysopoulos, he has written 14 books, if I remember well. I'm sorry because I don't have everything here. And he has been published in 7 languages, and his books are almost all of them translated by Actes Sud in France and also in other publishing houses, in other countries. And even Anne-Laure is a publisher and who is the translator of his in French. He has translated one of his books. She has translated all his books, but she has published one of his books, and he wasn't able to be with us, and we will see a video of him talking about another author's view, let's say.
Dear friends, I'm very happy to be joining you, and sending my regards from Zurich in Switzerland, where I am based at the moment in a writer's residency. And I'm saying this because it is somehow related to our discussion, but I will come back to that before I say goodbye. Now, since unfortunately I won't be part of your discussion, I would like to put 1 or 2 things on the table, 1 or 2 points for you to dwell upon, possibly, and consider. And I rely on agents, or maybe you have listeners, the way that publishers have readers. At the end of the day, though, the person who makes the final decision, I feel that needs to be aware of these very basic, very basic variables. And let's go through the process in that sense. So here it is. You have a demo, like a publisher has a manuscript. And what do? You just listen to it. And then you listen to it, and then you realize, well, this is good music. So what does this mean? It means, first of all, that it is somehow relates to your taste. But because your work is to publish music, the way publishers publish literature, your taste is broad and your taste is wide. But nevertheless, there is something that tells you that this is well made, which means that there is a sense of virtuosity in it. You judge it, you judge the work according to the rules of its art, and then it appears to be well made. There's a sense, as I said, of virtuosity in it. And then you can hear in the work, between the music phrases, the way in literature you do that between the actual lines, you hear other traditions, you hear other musics, you hear other musicians, you hear other composers, the same way that in a piece of writing you can relate this piece of writing to other works of literature that you have read or that you are aware of. So I think this is just like the first very basic point, is that you can relate to this piece of work, and you can relate to it because it somehow speaks to you, even though it doesn't address you personally. And you are engaged, you are somehow hooked into it, and then you move on. You just don't skip a track, you don't skip a page when you're reading, but you read through it. The work has the ability to keep you involved. So that means also that it tells something about you at this moment, even though at the moment that you're reading it, the moment that you perceive it, even though it doesn't address it specifically. I mean, this is more pertinent in a piece of writing, because a piece of writing could be saying something about our present, even though it doesn't address it. It could be set up in a different time, on a different age, one that is possibly never existing, or a place that has never existed. But nevertheless, it brings back some sort of reference to our point. So why am I saying all this? Because I feel that the answer to the question, why should you publish a Greek writer, goes back, or should go back, to the fundamentals about approaching a piece of writing. And then these are things that relate to the very fundamental function of literature before you think about readers. And then, of course, there is this concern. How will readers read this work? How will they understand it? Is this work somehow fitted to the things that I am writing? Am I able to represent it correctly? At the end of the day, will it make its money? Will it sell? Yes, all things are part of the process. But the fundamental question of why to publish a writer from Greece or any other place, it's because of the things that make his literature function in a way that good literature works. And before I say goodbye, this brings me back to the fact that I'm saying all this from Zurich in Switzerland. And the question is more or less, related. Why would you bring a writer in Switzerland and have him in a writer's residency? Why devote time and invest into having someone stay here? Well, I think in many ways it's the same way. It's the same reason why you invest money and effort into publish another writer. It's because someone who comes from another place, from another language, from another worldview, has something to contribute about the way we see ourselves in our world. And I hope that this is helpful. And this is what literature does, and this is what writers do, and this is what art does in general. And as I said, it can be very helpful. I hope these few points were helpful also for your discussion. And I'm saying again, my regards from a rather sunny Switzerland today, Zurich today. Bye-bye.
I wanted to thank you all. I think we have a lot of work, all of us, to do about Greek literature, to promote it, to choose it, to present it, to promote it, to publish it, to translate it, to edit it, to publish it, and to sell it to as much as readers as we can. As finally, this is art, the connection between. I mean, you have to have the receptionist at the end, I mean, the reader at the end, not just publish books. And this makes all of us happier anyway, for a lot of reasons. So I want to thank you all for your presence here, and see you soon in Zoom or elsewhere. Bye-bye.
The real life.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Katerina.
Thank you. Thank you.
Grazie a Seulus.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.